Hurry up and catch the culprit. And make sure the hospital takes full responsibility too. Have you contacted the police yet? No, I thought we'd wait for you to arrive and discuss it first. We will consider the hospital's response to Diana from now on. Of course, we will do everything we can. What do you mean by everything we can? Be specific. We're going to figure that out right now. There are surveillance cameras in Diana's room, right? Yes, severely injured patients who can't move on their own are usually placed in rooms with cameras in most hospitals. Since they can't press the nurse call button or call for help if their condition suddenly changes. You missed that 1 in a million chance, meaning the cameras are useless. It's impossible to monitor the cameras 24/7. But we always keep the recordings. This is so we can check what happened if there's a problem. So, if we check the cameras, there's a good chance the culprit will be on them, right? I think that's very likely. Can I see it too? How about watching it together with the police? My Diana had been in a persistent vegetative state since an accident 5 years ago. Yet, Diana is now pregnant. Overwhelmed by the situation, Timothy is constantly agitated and always confronting the doctors. This isn't getting us anywhere, so I decided to talk to the doctor instead. There are cameras in the room, so it seems like we could identify the culprit quickly by checking the footage. However, Timothy interrupts our conversation. I think checking the footage is pointless. Why? The cameras are blatantly installed in the room, right? There's no way the culprit didn't notice them. They must have taken some measures to do something so terrible. But we can't just not check. It's pointless. And even if the culprit is on the footage, do you really want to see what they did? I don't want to see that, but... Timothy is right. If we check the footage, we'll see something we don't want to see. It's better to leave this to the police. We finished talking to the doctor and went back to Diana's room. At that moment, Timothy had a nasty, villainous look on his face. There was something off about Timothy during the conversation with the doctor earlier too. My trust in Timothy is crumbling. Moreover, I overhear Timothy talking to someone later. The content of that conversation was utterly unacceptable. I'm Mary. I'm 42 years old and a housewife. My husband, Timothy, is a year older and works for a company. Timothy and I were friends in a college club. Timothy was a leader that everyone relied on, admired by many girls. And I was one of those many girls. With so many rivals, many of whom were cute, I was content just to watch Timothy from afar. However, for some reason, Timothy approached me. Why did you choose me out of all those popular girls? I once asked him. Mary, you get discouraged easily, right? I just couldn't leave you alone. I had always been self-conscious about my tendency to get easily discouraged. But it seemed that this personality trait worked in my favor, unintentionally activating the girl who needs to be protected appeal, a classic in romantic strategies. After a year of dating, Timothy became a working adult. Since there's only a year difference, I quickly followed suit. However, there was a big difference between being a college student and a working adult, and I felt like Timothy had become an adult first, making him seem even more reliable. In reality, Timothy, who had become a working adult first, was very reliable. I can't do it anymore. No matter what I do, I can't remember anything. I keep making mistakes, and my seniors are always angry at me. It's so hard to go to work. In my first year as a working adult, with my weak mental state, I naturally felt a constant sense of gloom. If my current self could be beside my younger self, I'd encourage her, telling her that it's normal to feel that work is tough and not wanting to go to the office. However, Speaking for those with a weak mental state, during such times, it's like being in the depths of negativity, where even standing up is painful. Some people might drop out entirely because of this. But I had Timothy. The job of a new employee is to cause trouble. You should only start worrying when no one says anything to you anymore. It's much scarier when they stop saying anything because they've given up on you. The fact that they still say things means they expect you to be able to do it. Also, if your current workplace really doesn't suit you, it's okay to change jobs, you know? It's not the era where sticking to the same company is seen as a virtue. It's still easier to find a job right after graduating from college. Timothy never told me to hang in there. Instead, he always reminded me not to overdo it. I had believed that giving my all was the right thing to do, but his words felt like a fog lifting from my eyes. Thanks to Timothy's advice, I was able to relax a bit and continue my job. I thought there was no one more reliable than him. 3 years after I started working, we had a shotgun marriage. We had been dating for almost 5 years, and as work was settling down, I could feel the atmosphere of marriage coming, so I wasn't surprised when I found out I was pregnant. Rather, I thought it was a great opportunity to get married. Neither of us had met each other's parents, but we had told them about each other when we were students. They also knew we were still together after becoming working adults. So, when we informed them of the pregnancy, they were not angry but instead happy. My parents had wanted me to get married soon, and his parents were eager to see their grandchild's face. After informing our parents, I wanted to have the wedding before my belly got too big, so we hurriedly prepared for the wedding. We successfully had the wedding, and then I gave birth to our daughter, Diana. Diana. You're always so cute. Hey, she just fell asleep. Don't wake her up. Timothy was obsessed with Diana. Because of this, he would rush home from work at lightning speed and wouldn't stay more than 3 feet away from Diana on weekends. He doted on Diana so much that I often worried he might spoil her too much. However, his obsession had its upsides, as Timothy actively took care of Diana. Thanks to that, I was able to smoothly return to work after my maternity leave. Diana continued to grow up healthy and strong, reaching the age of 12. She was supposed to start middle school soon. But now, she spends every day in a hospital bed. Diana was hit by a car while walking home from after-school tutoring with 2 friends. They were crossing the crosswalk when the signal turned green, but the driver was looking at their smartphone and didn't notice the light. Although I don't like to use the phrase, in the midst of misfortune, 2 of her friends only suffered fractures and were not in any life-threatening condition. However, Diana ended up in a persistent vegetative state. Her eyes are open, but she has no cognitive function and cannot move her body at all. I felt that Diana had taken on the misfortune meant for her friends, and I resented the 2 friends who were unharmed. I know I'm way off base. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to keep my sanity. You stay with Diana. I'll handle everything that's a hassle. I'm sorry. Please. I was barely able to stay by Diana's side, my mind on the brink of collapse. If I had to deal with the accident details or her treatment now, I knew I wouldn't be able to keep it together. Timothy understood my fragile mental state and took care of everything, from dealing with the person responsible for the accident to all the hospital paperwork. Timothy really is reliable. But he must be struggling too. I feel guilty for pushing all the responsibilities onto him. Feeling ashamed of my own helplessness, I inch closer to a complete mental breakdown. After some time, Diana's compensation was paid out. This money was to be used for Diana's future living expenses, so Timothy set up a separate account. The account Timothy showed me had tens of millions of dollars listed. Normally, this would be an enormous amount of money. This money ensures that we don't have to worry about Diana's immediate needs. While I'm grateful for it, looking at those figures fills me with emptiness. So, we'll pay for her hospitalization and other expenses from here. That's how it will be. We can't request more money if this runs out, right? What if it does? Can we cover Diana's hospital bills with our income? It feels like this amount is a countdown on how long we can be with Diana. Don't say that. Diana will recover before this money runs out. She might not. Even if she doesn't, we were told to keep talking to her for 10 or 20 years, never give up. They said people have recovered after 30 years. Stop talking so pessimistically. I'm sorry. You still seem really stressed. I'll keep handling the details, so you just stay with Diana. I'm sorry. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown. There was no way I could work in this state, so I quit my job to become a housewife and stay by Diana's side. But honestly, I didn't do much around the house, so it was more accurate to say I was unemployed. I stayed with Diana all the time, while Timothy continued working. At first, Timothy would visit the hospital every day after work. But after a while, he started coming less often, and my frustration with him grew. A year after Diana's accident, my frustration reached its limit. Why don't you come to the hospital more? Don't you care about Diana? You come home smelling of alcohol. What are you thinking? I unleashed a year's worth of pent-up frustration on Timothy. But it seemed I wasn't the only one holding in resentment. You could at least do some housework. Look at this living room. It's filthy and cluttered. It's not just here, it's the whole house. I'm coming home late because you don't cook, so I eat out. And you're not the only one hurting over Diana. Can't I escape with a little drink? I was clearly in the wrong. Timothy's shouting snapped me back to reality. Looking around, I finally saw how dirty the room was. I'm sorry. I'm not the only one suffering, am I? And I've been selfish, dumping everything on you. I apologize for yelling. You were right, Mary. I haven't been going to the hospital as much as I should have. From now on, I'll make more of an effort to visit Diana. By airing out our grievances, we both felt a sense of relief. This clarity allowed us to reflect on our actions, renewing our determination to work together for Diana's sake. Timothy had not been visiting the hospital for a few months, but he began coming 2 or 3 times a week. I started managing things at home and took up a part-time job. However, the hospital dealings were complicated and, having missed the initial explanations, I couldn't grasp everything. Thus, I left those responsibilities to Timothy. In return, I took charge of everything else. For a while, this arrangement worked. But soon, problems began to surface again. You didn't visit the hospital this week, did you? You missed last week too. Is work keeping you that busy? Yeah, it's been really hectic. That's why I'm getting home so late. Timothy had stopped visiting the hospital again and was coming home late. Although he claimed work was the reason, he often smelled of alcohol when he came back. While it would be easy to voice my frustrations again, I understood that Timothy had his struggles too. Given the circumstances, it was understandable that he might be experiencing emotional ups and downs. Being someone who often dealt with my own emotional fluctuations, I could empathize with Timothy's feelings. I believed that in time, he would start visiting the hospital again. With that in mind, I decided to watch over Timothy. However, this meant I couldn't rely on him for support during his low periods. I continued going to the hospital daily and working part-time. Gradually, I adapted to the routine, but my tendency to overdo things led to me falling ill. You never change, do you? I'm sorry. No, I'm the one who broke my promise to visit the hospital. From now on, I'll go on weekends without fail. You need to take a break. But you're the one working more. Everyone has different limits. It's not about who works more. If you don't overdo it and rest properly, you won't get sick like this. Plus, if you go to Diana looking exhausted, she will worry about you. You're right. Once again, we both reflected on our actions, and Timothy resumed his hospital visits. 3 years after Diana's accident, Timothy kept his promise and visited the hospital every weekend. When Timothy was at the hospital, I rested at home. This wasn't because we were taking Diana's situation lightly or neglecting her. Diana's treatment was a long-term process. In these 3 years, I learned that maintaining efficiency in our lives was crucial for enduring this long battle. As for Diana's condition, I noticed some improvement. Diana, it's a lovely day today, isn't it? We couldn't go outside last week because of the rain. Are you happy? I pushed Diana's wheelchair through the hospital courtyard. Diana started going for walks. A male nurse named Eric always accompanied us on these walks. Although female nurses primarily took care of Diana, Eric helped with moving her from the bed to the wheelchair. I saw a joy in Diana's face as she basked in the sunlight. Others might not notice any change in her expression. But to me, it seemed like Diana was smiling. Previously, there was no change in her expression, so I took this as a sign of her recovery. Moreover, the signs of her recovery were not limited to her expressions. When I talked to Diana while holding her hand, it felt like she was responding with blinks. Although it could be mistaken, there were also noticeable changes. Diana became able to eat again. Even though eating means she could swallow paste-like food through swallowing training, the main source of nutrition was still through a feeding tube. Nevertheless, it gave me hope and expectations. After finishing our walk and returning to the hospital room, a female nurse came in. This month's hospital bill hasn't been paid yet. It must be Timothy who forgot to pay it. I usually leave the communication with the hospital to Timothy. Therefore, I just needed to call him and let him know about the missed payment. However, Timothy has been on a business trip since yesterday. He could probably make the transfer from his trip, but I felt bad about bothering him for just a payment. I decided to go home and look for Diana's account where her money was deposited. Oh, it's not here. I thought it would be in the drawer where we keep our joint accounts, but I couldn't find Diana's account. Oh, it must be there. There is a shelf where we keep documents and contracts used during hospitalizations and accidents. Diana's account must be there. As expected, I found Diana's account in the place I had predicted. However, the contents were different from what I had expected. Huh? It's already this low? When I checked the account balance, it had already dropped to less than half. I understand that hospitalizations cost money. However, nearly $100,000 disappearing in 3 years is strange. I began to rummage through the shelves again to find documents that detail Diana's hospitalization costs. Then, from the shelf, a large number of membership cards, business cards, and coupons from sexual entertainment establishments came out. It seemed Timothy had been frequenting strip clubs. When I searched for the names on the membership cards and business cards, I found some were from clubs. Judging by the decrease in the money, it looked like he had also been spending on branded goods. When he smelled of alcohol, it was a club, and when he didn't smell of alcohol but came home late, it was a strip club. The unnecessary thoughts made me feel sick. If it were just strip clubs or clubs, some might get furious and make him promise not to go again. However, this was an amount that couldn't be dismissed so lightly. More than anything, I couldn't forgive him for touching Diana's money. I decided to confront Timothy when he returned from his business trip. What's the meaning of this? Well, when Diana had the accident, you were going through a really negative phase, remember? I was so stressed out by you. So, I used it as stress relief. So, it has been since then? I've had my breakdowns, but I haven't been negative since then, have I? Well, about a year after that, we had that big fight, right? I stopped spending money then. But once you indulge even once, you can't go back, you can't resist. I was ready to confront Timothy about using Diana's money and even consider divorce. However, the cause of his spending was my mental breakdown that had put stress on him. Understanding that I was also part of the cause, I couldn't get completely angry at him. I see. I understand. But there won't be a next time. You're forgiving me? When Diana recovers, are you planning to tell her we got divorced? Right, you're right. But, as I said before, there really won't be a next time. Next time, I'll show no mercy and divorce you. I'll take over Diana's account. When there's a payment, let me know the recipient and the amount. I'll handle it from now on. I hate how weak-willed I am in these situations. Timothy understood my personality and probably knew this would happen. However, even if I knew, I couldn't fight against my nature, so I made a compromise and told myself this was fine for now. 5 years after the accident. Since Timothy's incident of embezzling money, he has been more subdued. I hold Diana's account and have significantly reduced his allowance, so he can't frequent strip clubs anymore. Sometimes he comes home late, but he shouldn't have any money on hand, so he's probably just drinking within his allowance. I continue to work part-time while visiting Diana. It's raining today, so we can't go for a walk. I say this while wiping Diana's body, as usual. When I was about to wipe her belly as usual, I noticed that Diana's belly was swollen. Diana can eat, though it's in paste form. Even so, she can't eat enough to make her stomach swell. I thought her unnaturally swollen belly might be due to some illness, so I called a nurse. After that, a doctor examined her and revealed something unbelievable. Diana was pregnant. Of course, Diana, in a persistent vegetative state, couldn't do such a thing herself. I immediately called Timothy. When Timothy heard about Diana's pregnancy over the phone, he flew over at the speed of light and yelled at the doctor the moment he saw him. What the hell is going on with the security in this hospital? The doctor shrank back, unable to respond. Timothy, showing no mercy, continued. You've contacted the police, right? Catch the perpetrator quickly. And the hospital will have to take appropriate responsibility for this. The doctor just nodded in response to Timothy's fury. Timothy's anger was justified, and I was angry too. However, just yelling wouldn't solve anything. I calmed Timothy down and talked to the doctor. Have you contacted the police? No, I thought it would be best to wait until Timothy arrived and we discussed it. We will consider Diana's care from now on. Of course, we will do everything we can. What do you mean by everything we can? Be specific. We're going to figure that out right now. I stopped Timothy, who was getting unnecessarily confrontational, and continued the conversation. There are surveillance cameras in Diana's room, right? Yes, I believe we informed you when she was admitted. Those cameras are for security, but also to monitor the patient's condition. Patients who are severely incapacitated and can't move on their own are often placed in rooms with cameras in most hospitals. since they can't press the nurse call button or call for help in case of sudden changes. You're missing the point of having cameras if you can't catch something like this. I was getting tired of having to stop him all the time, so I glared at Timothy to make him quiet. We can't monitor the cameras 24/7, but they are always recording. It's to check what happened in cases like this. So, if we check the cameras, there's a chance the perpetrator will be on them, right? I think that's quite possible. Can I see it too? How about checking with the police? This made me feel a bit relieved, thinking the perpetrator would be caught soon. However, Timothy ruined it. Checking the footage will be useless. Why? The camera is right there in the room, isn't it? The perpetrator wouldn't miss that. They must have done something to avoid it before committing such a horrible act. But we can't just not check. Checking is pointless. Besides, even if the culprit was caught on camera, do you really want to see what they did to Diana? No! I don't want to see that. In that case, leave it to the police. We should focus on the hospital and what comes next. Just like always, you stay with Diana, and I'll handle things with the hospital. Let's wait for the hospital to give us their best response. Considering their lack of security, we should expect significant action from them. If they try to give us anything less, we'll push back. Timothy took my hand and led me back to Diana's hospital room. Once we were back in the room, Timothy started to smirk unpleasantly. He was snapping at the doctors and putting pressure on the hospital to get the best possible conditions for Diana. With a mixture of fear and hope that I wouldn't hear the answer I dreaded, I cautiously asked Timothy, "Are you planning to get money from the hospital?" "Of course, isn't that obvious?" "Are you saying you don't want it?" "It's not that. I think we should get what we rightfully need, but watching you, it feels like you'll demand more than that." "And what's wrong with that? It's only right to take as much as we can. This is like Diana earning her own money using her body. But she can't speak up for herself. So, it's our duty as her parents to get as much as we can from the hospital, don't you think?" Timothy seemed to be so immersed in his visits to strip clubs that it had tainted his mind. I hold no prejudice against women who work at strip clubs. There are certainly those who take pride in their work. However, Diana never wanted to be pregnant. Yet Timothy claimed she had earned money using her body. My trust in Timothy was crumbling away. Can money and greed really corrupt a person this much? I skipped work to be here, so I need to call the office. As Timothy left the room, his back looked like that of a movie villain to me. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'll make sure everything's all right." I held Diana's hand, offering words without any real foundation. I knew better than anyone that I couldn't do anything, being neither a doctor, a police officer, nor a lawyer. I sighed and looked out at the courtyard from the window. That's when I saw Timothy. He was heading towards the far end of the courtyard. It seemed he was planning to go to a hidden part of the building. But if it was just a call, he didn't need to go that far. He wasn't even dialing while walking. My suspicions grew, and I hurriedly followed Timothy. Concealing myself, I saw Timothy meeting with a male nurse. It was Eric, the nurse who always helped with Diana's walks. He must have arrived while I was coming down from the room. I listened intently to their conversation. What I heard was unbelievable. My feelings boiled down to pure rage upon learning the truth. A few days after Diana's pregnancy was discovered, Diana underwent an abortion. Though the risks were high, the procedure was successful. In my heart, I felt relief, believing Diana was on the road to recovery and regaining her strength, so I made a victory pose. As for the crucial hospital room camera, just as Timothy had said, there was no suspicious figure caught. In fact, There were no interruptions or signs of tampering or editing in the footage. It was as if Diana had been impregnated by a ghost. However, DNA testing of the fetus revealed that the culprit was not a ghost, but Eric, the male nurse who helped with Diana's walks. The perpetrator was Eric, wasn't it? What a stupid thing to do. Well, thanks to him, we get money from the hospital. We should thank him. With harsh words, Timothy acted as if the case was already resolved since the perpetrator was caught. However, the real resolution of the case starts now. When Timothy and I were at home, the doorbell rang. Is it a delivery? I think it's your guest. Can you get it? Huh? Oh, okay. Timothy gave me a puzzled look before heading to the front door. I followed behind him. What? What's going on? When Timothy opened the door, a police officer was standing there. Did you call them? Timothy turned around abruptly, showing me a surprised expression. I didn't call them, but I got a heads up that they would come soon. They asked if you were home. What do you mean? I overheard you and Eric talking at the edge of the courtyard. The edge of the courtyard? That's right. I heard you allowing Eric to do terrible things to Diana for money. What were you thinking, selling Diana's body? The day Diana's pregnancy was discovered, I overheard a conversation between Timothy and Eric. What should we do? I never thought she would get pregnant. Seriously. What were you thinking? Now the perfect plan of taking Diana for a walk, avoiding the security cameras, and pretending I, as her father, was just on a walk with her is ruined. Am I going to get caught? Probably, isn't that what you said? That DNA testing can be done even on the fetus. You'll get arrested, and I'll lose the allowance you give me. My wife has taken control of our account, and I get only a little allowance. Your money was my last resort. Now I can't even go to the strip club. This sucks. Well, thanks to you, I'll probably trick the hospital into giving me money. But don't break your promise. I'm going to tell the police that I did it by myself, right? That's right. Not only did I let you have sex with a 17-year-old virgin, but I let you do it for a cheap price, so it's only natural that you should be the only one guilty, right? Just make sure you keep your end of the deal. I know. If you get caught and get out later, I'll let you have it again. And don't worry, I'll remember the discount for taking the fall. I felt like I was going to vomit from disgust, but I recorded their conversation on my smartphone. I submitted that recording to the police. With the DNA test results and the recording, the police took action. When Eric was caught, he tried to stick to the deal with Timothy and take the blame alone. However, faced with the audio data I provided, he confessed everything. Eric's mention of Timothy led the police to decide they needed to talk to him as well, so they came to get him. Any excuse you make now is pointless. Damn it! What's wrong with letting a guy have a little fun? It's not like it means anything. Timothy was quietly taken away by the police. I didn't miss the words he muttered at that moment. I had already planned to get a divorce, but my resolve grew stronger. Since Diana was only 17 and underage, both Timothy and the nurse were charged with child welfare law violation and prostitution law violation. Even though it was their first offense, the severity of their actions led to a 7-year prison sentence. Of course, Timothy and I got divorced. We split the marital savings, but I didn't give him any of Diana's money because she still needed it for her hospital stays. Losing his social standing after a prison sentence would make things tough for him upon release. I briefly considered giving him a bit more money to help, but remembering his words as he was taken away changed my mind. Now, I want him to struggle as much as possible. I moved back to my parents' house, and Diana was transferred to a hospital nearby. My parents agreed to help support Diana, so I decided to go back to work. Though it would be challenging due to the gap in my employment, I was determined to work hard to support Diana. There are no seats for the poor. Standing as if blocking the path between the bride and groom, the bride's mother, Susanna, stood. The bride, Sharon, seemed puzzled by her mother's actions. We felt the same. I exchanged glances with my son, Parker. Today is Parker and Sharon's wedding ceremony. It's supposed to be their big day, yet somehow, Susanna is dominating the scene. I looked at Susanna. She looked down on Parker and me completely. I see. Then, it can't be helped. Shall we go home? Yeah. We decided to leave the venue. I could hear Sharon seemingly pleading with her. Susanna doesn't think she's in the wrong. She thinks it's our fault, being poor and from a single-parent family. But I disagree. What's so sinful about being a single-parent family? And what's inferior about it? I'll show Susanna the seriousness of a mother who raised her son on her own. My name is Diana, 50 years old. I was blessed with my only son, Parker, when I was 25. However, my husband, Carter, met with a traffic accident shortly after Parker was born and passed away. For the past 25 years, I've raised and supported him. I didn't remarry. I worked tirelessly in part-time jobs. All that hard work was about to be rewarded. I've got a girlfriend. I want her to meet you. How much that saved me. But Parker's engagement brought new turmoil to our home. What's Parker's annual income? The first words were not a greeting but a question. It was a luxurious mansion. As I was amazed by the surprisingly comfortable chairs, Parker's fiancée, Sharon, and her mother, Susanna, appeared. As Parker hesitated to reveal his income, Susanna snorted arrogantly. Is that all? Mom! Please stop! Sharon frowned. I must have had a similar expression. My honest opinion was that Susanna was rude. Thank you for coming today, Sharon said, trying to smooth things over. I've made tea with my favorite brand. Don't bother. These people wouldn't know the difference anyway. Mom. Sharon looked hurt. Parker, sitting opposite Sharon, said, Maybe I can't tell the difference in taste, but I want to hear what she wants to say. Parker, thank you. Finally, a smile appeared on her face. Susanna watched the exchange between the two with a look of annoyance. She doesn't seem to approve of their relationship. May I have a moment? What is it? I was beckoned by Susanna to another room. Apparently, she didn't want to cause Sharon any more discomfort. That meant the upcoming conversation was bound to be pointless. What nerve! Pardon? Your son! How dare he propose to my daughter with such a low income? Susanna raised her voice hysterically. I was speechless. Parker graduated from a fairly well-known university, and his job is not bad. And he met Sharon at his workplace. Meaning, in terms of income, they are not inferior. Yet, she unilaterally treats him as the bad guy. The heir to this house is her brother. So, she will eventually marry and leave this house. So, that's your dissatisfaction? Of course! Her face turned red with excitement. I had a detective check. You are a single-parent family. And what of it? I tilted my head. I've never felt inferior for being a single-parent family. Sure, there were days when I came home late. Those times, I might have made Parker feel lonely. But as a result, he grew up to be a fine person. I'll protect Mom for all the hardships we've faced. I'll never forget him saying that on his 18th birthday. True to his word, he has been striving. He went to university on a scholarship, always keeping his grades at the top. After graduating, he got a job at his current company. He's my pride and joy. I couldn't just stand by when someone spoke ill of Parker. Excuse me, but you must have irresponsibly had a child and then been abandoned by the man. How despicable. You're the one with a terrible imagination, I said, my fist trembling. Susanna frowned. What did you say? How can you only imagine such vulgar things? What's in your head is much worse. I won't allow any more insults to my wife. A low, growling voice sounded. Looking up, an elderly man was standing at the entrance of the room, glaring at us. Carl! Susanna cried out and ran to the man. He embraced Susanna with a sloppy smile. It seems this man is Susanna's husband, Carl. Susanna wore a triumphant smile. She seems to believe that being married somehow makes her superior. Listen, Carl. Yes, I understand. Carl, who had been speaking to his wife in a saccharine tone, suddenly changed his expression and glared at us. If you continue to insult my wife, I will have to call a lawyer. It was you who started criticizing my son unilaterally. I appealed. But it was useless. Carl, smitten with his wife, saw me as an enemy. So, someone like you is going to be part of my daughter's family. Sharon has poor judgment in people. Yes, indeed. The couple looked down on Parker and me together. As I was at a loss for words, footsteps could be heard. Stop it, both of you. Sharon. I thought it was strange that you suddenly disappeared, so I came looking for you. Parker said with a voice trying to suppress his anger. Sharon, I'm sorry. We're going to leave now. Parker. Sharon looked down, seeming lonely. Parker momentarily made a face as if he was about to linger, but then he quickly changed his expression. Let's go, Mom. Yes. Parker took my hand and started walking. Susanna's voice was thrown at our backs. Don't ever come back to our house again. As if we would, I thought. Sharon did nothing wrong. Rather, it was sad that she was caught between her parents and us. I just couldn't forgive her parents. What should I do? Is it okay to just watch over their relationship? Hey, Parker. I have no intention of breaking up with her, Parker said, seemingly sensing my feelings. His eyes looked down, filled with apology. I'm really in love with her. So, with those words and expressions, I made up my mind. I'll support you too. Mom. He must have thought I would oppose it. Parker smiled, relieved. And his smile made me smile too. I've been quietly watching over their relationship. Since then, we haven't met her parents. Sharon seems to avoid the topic, and when she comes to our house, she talks about other things. Naturally, Parker leads the conversation. He makes sure not to immerse themselves in their own world, always including me in their talks. I'm very grateful for that. Mom, about the venue. The venue? What about it? I tilted my head, and the two exchanged looks. Mom, get it together. We just talked about it. About our wedding ceremony. The wedding ceremony? I exclaimed foolishly. So, you're finally getting married? Although our parents are against it, it's our life. Sharon seemed complicated, but determination was at the root of it. Sharon had chosen to walk through life with Parker. As a mother, could there be anything more gratifying? I think highly of Sharon. If she can support Parker as his wife, there's nothing more reassuring. I was teary-eyed. Parker noticed and panicked. Mom. Sorry, I know it's too early to cry, but… I hastily wiped away my tears. Sharon offered me a handkerchief. A white handkerchief with scattered light blue clovers. Diana. Thank you. I was happy. Having such a kind son and his bride by my side. But this feeling of happiness was cruelly shattered. The nightmare began at the wedding ceremony venue. Oh? I stopped in confusion. I couldn't find my seat anywhere in the venue. I walked around the venue to check, but still, there was no seat for me. Perhaps it was a mistake by the staff. Thinking this, I approached a staff member. Excuse me. Are you still here? The response came not from a staff member but from Susanna. She stood with her arms crossed, laughing unreservedly. Shouldn't you take a hint by now? This marriage is very important to our family, Susanna said with a voice that looked down on me. Indeed, Susanna had arranged the entire ceremony. All of Sharon's preferences were rejected, and Parker's opinions were ignored. Mom, wait. Sharon and Parker approached, looking concerned. Susanna stepped between them, standing protectively like a mother shielding her children, blocking the bride and groom. And then she said those words. There are no seats for the poor. Ah, I see. So, there was never a seat for me from the beginning. Understanding this, I was filled with a sense of emptiness. Shall we go home? Yeah. Parker took my hand and we started to leave. Sharon seemed to be pleading with her mother. But Susanna remained unfazed. Thus, the nightmare of a wedding ceremony ended. As we got into the car, Parker received a call on his mobile phone. It was from Sharon. Are you two okay? Yeah, sorry for leaving you alone there. It's not your fault. It's my parents' fault. Her voice was clearly dejected. Parker must have wanted to stay by her side. I lifted my face and said, Stay with Sharon. But I can go home alone. I tried to remember how to smile, but my expression was stiff. Sorry. After hesitating, Parker went back to the venue. Driving home, I wondered, what's so wrong with being a single-parent family? Susanna had mentioned hiring a detective. If so, she didn't understand anything about him at all. But maybe that's for the best. I realized then what I was about to do. It's clear. I will give that hateful woman what she deserves. I have all the cards in hand. Susanna must have only paid attention to what was convenient for her. So she hadn't noticed. I returned home and waited for him. Parker came back with Sharon. I'm sorry about my parents. It's okay. I had regained my calm demeanor. The two seemed relieved. Looking at each other with reassurance, I said, I'll contact Walker. Eh? Parker's smile faded. Sharon looked puzzled. What's wrong? Walker is my grandfather. He's the president of the Woodward Company. Such. Sharon seemed to understand the situation. She spoke in a flustered manner. Is there no other way? We've reached our limit, I said in a low, moaning voice. Walker promised me when Carter passed away. He said if there was ever any trouble, he would definitely help. That's right. The day Carter was in an accident and never returned. Do you want us to take Parker in? It must be hard for a woman alone. Walker, Parker's grandfather, my father-in-law, had offered. But I had shaken my head. I will raise him by myself. So be it. Walker had promised. The moment to fulfill that promise had finally arrived. Dad was supposed to be the successor of the company, Parker said, looking down. That you were the grandson of the president. I kept quiet because I didn't want to be judged by Grandpa's prestige. I understand that, but I wished you had told me. Sharon's voice had completely fallen. It's not surprising. The Woodward Company is a globally renowned corporation. Having someone with such a company as their backing, Susanna has made an enemy. They're finished. The retaliation began immediately. Our business partners are withdrawing one after another, it seems. So, I nodded without surprise. Since then, Sharon had returned home only once to collect her belongings and hadn't returned to her parents' house. She's essentially living at our house now, helping with household chores wherever she can. But the look on her back is far from that of a blissful new bride. Right now, she is caught between her family and her marriage. It must be hard for her. Parker is worried about her exhausted state. He buys her favorite sweets on his way home from work and listens to her feelings now and then. If this continues, my family will be left homeless. There's nothing we can do about it. I sighed back at the tearful Sharon. Walker accepted me, someone who didn't match his family's social status or education, as his son's wife. It was a testament to his trust and love for his child, who had made his own choice. That is. She hesitated. Her family condemned her for being from a single-parent home, treating it as a fault. They looked down on Parker for not being suitable for their family. But what is the reality? That poor-looking man is the grandson of a big company's president? Impossible! Shouldn't you apologize now? Don't say stupid things. The conversation between her parents that Sharon overheard when she went home to collect her things was just like that. However, since that was the only time she went back, what her parents talked about after is unknown. My mom isn't the type to apologize to anyone. Indeed. Some people only feel fulfilled by looking down on others. Such petty people. And also pitiable. What if you suggest apologizing to your family? It's impossible. Or rather, it would be pointless. Doing that would only make my mom more stubborn. What a troublesome person! He was frustrated. Sharon, too, shook her head sadly. It seemed there was no solution for them to improve the situation. Nor did I have one. Or rather, I had no intention of stopping it. They were intoxicated with power, looking down on others, unafraid to trample on those around them. And by misjudging who to look down upon, they are now on the receiving end. It was only a matter of time before they were crushed by power. What would they do then? If they're as competent as they boasted, they'll manage on their own. Diana. Sharon finally broke into tears. Mom, that's enough, isn't it? Maybe it's time to call Grandpa. Just then, Sharon received a call on her mobile phone. Sharon looked up, wiping her tears to check the notification. Her eyes widened in surprise. Mom. Go ahead. They might have their reasons too. Yes. I encouraged her, and Sharon reluctantly answered the call. A loud voice could be heard from the phone even from where I was. You traitor! Running away as soon as our family is in danger. Aren't you ashamed? I'm not running away. Sharon sounded somewhat indignant. Understandably so. She hasn't run from anyone. Yesterday and today, she's been facing reality. Worrying about her family while choosing to stay with us. Not to ingratiate herself with us, but to stop me. Sharon became more assertive. Mom, do you see now? Judging people superficially is what led to this, right? Don't act like you understand. The voice of Susanna, furious. Sharon, in contrast, was calm. Maybe her suffering has given her something to think about. Why did you have to be so cruel? I wanted to get along with my new family. But you couldn't do that. That woman doesn't fit into our family. Susanna seems to have narrowed down her disdain to me alone. I bit my lip. Yes. I am just an ordinary woman, born into an average family, without notable education, looks, or anything. But someone accepted and loved me for who I am. He was from a prestigious family, and at first, I was intimidated. But eventually, we were drawn to each other and decided to marry. Do you have any regrets? That's all Walker asked. There's no way I would. I can't forget his face when he answered. The warm and reliable profile of him saying he would protect me. Yet, Carter broke his promise so easily. He left for heaven alone, leaving me behind, my dearest. Tell Susanna. What should I tell her? I cut through my self-mockery and said in my usual tone, that I'm giving you a chance. What a proposition. What kind of face I was making. I didn't even know. I'll have Walker come over. Then you can appeal directly that this treatment is unfair. I'd like that. It seems my voice reached without the need for Sharon to mediate. Susanna said with a voice that seemed to put forth her last bit of defiance. Getting upset over such a trivial matter and opposing us. It may be trivial, but I don't mind being the focus of attacks and insults. But what about Parker, whose mother-in-law will be a woman with such a character? When will he too start receiving poor treatment? This isn't just about pride. It's a fight of a mother worrying and protecting her child. Susanna seemed not to understand that. The direct confrontation that ensued turned out to be quite pitiful. I'm terribly sorry. For what, exactly, are you apologizing? As soon as Carl entered the room, he apologized deeply. Walker sat on the sofa, observing the couple. Susanna looked down on Carl with disdain. Carl! Won't you bow your head too? It's entirely our fault. He began to sob. I stood beside Walker. Parker and Sharon were not allowed to attend. It would be too cruel a scene for them to witness, Walker decided. Entirely? Walker's eyebrows twitched. Explain specifically. What did you do, and what was wrong? That is... Carl fell silent. It seems he couldn't answer the question. No wonder. They don't truly think they're in the wrong. They're just apologizing to placate Walker, waiting for the storm to pass. Like a child scolded by a teacher at school. So you're bowing your head without even knowing what you did wrong. That's, well... Carl looked helplessly at his wife. Susanna smiled. It's about the oversight of not preparing a seat for Diana. We're truly sorry. An oversight? I raised my voice. I remember. There are no seats for the poor. What are you talking about? She acted as if she didn't understand what was said. I was dumbfounded. Susanna was trying to pretend it didn't happen because Walker wasn't there. How dirty can you get? You're the one with the paranoia. Stop slandering us already. That's enough, Walker said wearily. So you insist it was an oversight? Of course. Susanna answered immediately. Hope was in her eyes. If she could convince Walker, it would be their victory. But in the next moment, he was furious. How far will you go with your lies? I've confirmed your actions with everyone at the venue, not just my grandchildren. Everyone. That's impossible. The light faded from Susanna's eyes, and she collapsed on the spot. Carl, do something. She clung to his husband beside her, but he was just crying. Walker addressed the pitiful couple. If you had truly apologized from the bottom of your hearts, I might have forgiven you. But what about now? Nothing but lies for self-preservation. I'm so appalled I'm at a loss for words. It's not like your son chose a worthless woman. Susanna screamed in rage. Aren't you frustrated? That such a woman would become your son's wife. Do you hate Diana that much? Walker looked more pitiful than angry. Susanna shouted. Yes. I didn't like that woman. So I was mean to her. Just for that, why should I suffer like this? Because that mindset is incompatible with mine. Walker's voice was instructive. I wanted to understand what kind of person Diana is. Saying so, Walker looked at me. I instinctively straightened up. Walker exuded the aura of a sage who had attained enlightenment. Carter wouldn't choose a strange woman. So, there must be charm in this person. I wanted to know that charm by talking. What a waste of time! Susanna scoffed, but he remained calm. Diana is good and hardworking. She raised my grandson alone commendably. Carter's judgment of people was not mistaken. Yes. Exactly. Carl seized the opportunity to cozy up to him. He seemed to be looking for a chance to seek forgiveness. My wife is quite different. Susanna lacks judgment in people. That's why she targeted Diana and Parker. You're cowardly, man. He was speechless. Walker slightly frowned and said, Are you pushing all the blame onto your wife? First off, if that's the case, you're at fault for choosing a woman with no judgment. That's enough! Susanna yelled. All eyes turned to her. Susanna twisted her lips and said, President, you really want to side with Diana, don't you? Of course. Walker nodded. Then, talking is useless. I think so too. When Walker nodded again, Susanna had already turned her back. Carl, let's go. No point in saying anything more. Now, we have to somehow rebuild the company on our own. That's easier said than done. All our clients have left because of the president's pressure. His meek attitude seemed to displease her. She says in an irritated voice. Then we'll find new clients. That's impossible. He was dragged away as he left. Left behind, I sighed. Thank you, Walker. No need. Walker shook his head leisurely. Then, as if to admonish me, he said, You earned my trust through your own strength and actions. And they earned my disappointment with their words and actions. Yes. Walker had not blindly sided with me. It was my actions that gained his trust, to begin with. Meaning, if I were to stray from the path, he wouldn't help me anymore. I'll remember this. I bowed deeply to Walker. The situation of Susanna and her husband's downfall was conveyed through Sharon. She has been staying with us, and since then, she has started to contact her. Sharon, come back home now. You need to help with the business. No, Mom. I'm not coming back. Determination was evident in Sharon's eyes. You want to marry me off to a wealthy family, don't you? You child. It seemed I had hit the mark. Her growl was audible even from here. You've changed. But... It's okay. I smiled reassuringly. Sharon nodded and handed me the phone. Susanna? How dare you let me hear that voice? I'm not talking to you because I want to. I took over the phone to settle things with her. And also out of concern for Sharon. I said in a calm voice, I've decided to forget about your meanness. What? A foolish response came back. I continued, I don't want to be involved with you forever. So, I decided to forget about you. Hating someone is just tiring, and there's no benefit to me. Don't talk pretentiously. She snarled like a carnivore. I won't forget you. I'll hold a grudge against you for life. I understood why Walker didn't accept Susanna's apology. In that chilling voice, give me back my daughter. She's my son's wife. There's a marriage certificate. Then I'll make them divorce right now. To the shouting Susanna, that's impossible. I said, it's something she should know. Sharon is pregnant. With Parker's child. What? That was all Susanna could say before falling silent. She seemed unsure of how to react. After a pause, Susanna spoke, her voice trembling. Please, give me back my daughter. I don't want the child in her belly. Are you still saying things like that? I sighed. Looking at Sharon, she was gently caressing her not yet prominently swollen belly. Could she possibly think about abandoning her born child and returning to her parents' home? That's unimaginable. Being a mother herself, how could she not understand? Do you intend to separate Sharon and her child? If she has a child, she won't find another marriage. She was being selfish, apparently planning to use them for her own convenience. Don't get involved with Sharon anymore. I am her mother. Susanna weakly protested but didn't give up. Give her back. Don't be unreasonable. I'm hanging up now. Wait. The pregnancy, that's a lie. She can't be that. She was panicking. Let me talk to her again. That is. I'll talk to her. Sharon interjected, seeing the situation. She's in a delicate period now. Worrying it might stress her, I ultimately handed over the phone. Mom? Sharon, right? You're lying, aren't you? That woman is lying, right? Mom, it's all true. Sharon said calmly. I'm going to be a mother in this home. So, I can't meet your expectations, and please, don't call me anymore. Her voice carried a definite force. She groaned, troubled. Eventually, her voice became muffled, seemingly crying. Sharon, please. We have no other means. Our house is falling apart. Without it, Carl and I have nowhere to go. Relatives have disowned us. What are we supposed to do? That's something for adults to figure out. Taking back the phone, I said, all of this is a result of your actions. She must take responsibility as an adult. Being punished for looking down on me and Parker just for being a single-parent family. Wait! Her voice was desperate. I silently ended the call. Despite persistent calls thereafter, Sharon, looking exasperated, turned off her mobile phone. Walker was also pleased with Sharon's pregnancy. I wish to be involved with the family this time, truly. Yes, please come to visit our home. Parker replied proudly. Because the house had become too small, moving to a new place in spring was decided. Due to budget constraints, it's a bit far from the station and slightly inconvenient, but it has a large garden. A home where dreams of home gardening and various flowers expand. Since then, Susanna has quieted down significantly. Occasionally, Carl contacts Sharon, but it seems only to vent about the failing company and his grievances towards Susanna. Dad just blames everything on Mom. I wish he'd be a bit more responsible. Yeah, especially now that he's going to be a grandpa. Parker said with a laugh. Sharon smiled too. Seeing their harmonious relationship fills me with contentment. Life in the new home was going smoothly. I quit my job to focus on homemaking. Sharon worked until her belly grew considerably, but is now on leave for childbirth at home. The baby born was a girl. Christina, it's such nice weather. The flowers are beautiful too. Sharon smiled at her, and the baby in her arms smiled back. Christina, named so, resembled her father more. Christina, which do you like more, flowers or mom? She smiles looking at both. No, she's happy because her mom is beautiful. Don't say such flattering things. Parker made Sharon laugh. Can I hold her too? Yes. I lifted my granddaughter Christina into my arms. She was a tiny life, newly born. Yet, the weight in my arms felt significant. What a good girl. Thanks to you. Sharon's smile had evolved from her once innocent expression to one filled with the intelligence of a mother. Grandpa will be coming over for Christmas. Oh, we need to start preparing then. I handed Christina back to Sharon and stood up. I'll help too. Thank you. Let's see, until Christmas. I glanced at the calendar. It was filled with various entries. Notes about future family plans and work schedules. I felt the presence of the passing time, a testament to our lives inscribed there. I'm going to marry your sister. ATM is no longer needed. I could hear the mocking laughter over the phone. But I didn't let out a surprised sound. I thought if I played into their hands, it would weaken my position. And by now, I had not an iota of love left for my husband, Zach. Okay, brace yourself. I replied calmly, but inside, anger was boiling over. Zach, who dumped all the childcare, elder care, and housework on me, was enjoying an affair with my sister, Nicole. And Nicole too, after borrowing all that money from me, she slept with my husband and even called me an ATM at the end. It was unforgivable. You're okay with us divorcing, right? When Zach pressed me, I simply nodded yes. On the other end of the phone, the two of them cheered. Enjoy it while you can. There's no way they won't get their comeuppance for belittling me like this. I bit my lip hard. My name is Maggie. I'm 60 years old, living with my husband Zach, who's 5 years my senior. Our son, Alan, is 30 this year, already independent and out of the house. I was working part-time at a grocery store until recently, but due to the recent surge in prices, I was forced into early retirement for cost-cutting. The manager, who was very kind since I worked there for many years, even gave me a severance package despite being part-time. It's a bit sad to retire before reaching the age of retirement, but working at the grocery store definitely helped me grow. So I'm very grateful to the manager who continued to employ me. One might think I'm set for a slow life in retirement, but actually, I'm having some domestic issues. Well, more with Zach than with the household. With our loveless and distant marriage, I'm very anxious about living together for many more years. Why did it come to this? Let me start from the beginning. I met Zach over 40 years ago. Back then, I was a student job hunting, talking to various industry veterans. Most of them were seniors from the newspaper club I was part of. At a club drinking party, many alumni, including Zach, would show up. Maggie, what kind of company do you want to work for? Zach, rumored to be the handsome senior in the club, asked me with a comfortable distance. I honestly told him I wanted to work for a stable company. How about the bank I work at? Banking's probably the most stable, right? Indeed, it seems like a solid job. While my response was cliché, I was happy Zach invited me to his bank. Encouraged by Zach, I applied to his bank and got the job. It wasn't too difficult as the bank hired many students from my university. Once I started working at the bank, I realized many women liked him. Zach, always invited out for meals after work, seemed out of reach for me. But Zach often asked me out, and despite feeling guilty towards his other admirers, I started going out with him more as I was interested. So, we started dating and got married 3 years later, after which I quit the bank. It's regretful to quit just after 4 years, but back then, most women quit upon marriage. Especially since Zach and I were in the same workplace, He seemed to prefer I work part-time elsewhere. I had no regrets about marrying Zach and quitting my job. For a while, we enjoyed our life together until I got pregnant and gave birth to our son, Alan, at 30. Zach, who used to treat me like a princess, suddenly became indifferent after the birth. Zach, can you make a bottle for Alan? A bottle? That's a mom's job. Why do I have to do it? His sudden change in attitude left me more in shock rather than in sadness or anger. I had heard that men sometimes lose interest when their wives give birth. But I thought that was a story for only a small fraction of couples. I never imagined that Zach, who loved me so much, would suddenly cast me aside like throwing something into the open sea after I had our child. From then on, every day was a whirlwind. Zach continued to refuse to help with the baby. Taking care of the baby is a mom's job. Plus, you're a housewife, so it's natural for you to take care of it. I'm busy with work. Zach had his plausible reasons, but they didn't satisfy me. But it's my first time too, and raising the baby alone is hard work. As I countered while watching Zach's reaction, he glared at me. If it's that hard, why don't you go to my dad's? Dad's free and can help you out. To your father? Yeah, that's right. I was utterly shocked by Zach's suggestion. Zach's mom had passed away early, and only his dad, Bob, was left, who recently had trouble with his legs and might need to go to a care facility. How could he think of leaving our child with Bob? Moreover, Zach completely refused to be involved with the baby, essentially just dumping it on his parents. Zach's outlandish idea left me troubled. Since then, I received little help from Zach in raising Alan, and I had to do it alone, repeatedly reading childcare books. Fortunately, Alan was a well-behaved and obedient child, who listened to me and grew up healthy. When Alan turned 5, after sending him off to kindergarten, I noticed a call on my mobile phone. Maggie, it looks like Dad collapsed. I'm thinking of putting him in a facility. Can you handle the paperwork? What? Collapsed? Is he okay? And about the facility? I was very surprised by Zach's call. The news of Bob's collapse was alarming. I hoped he had been taken to the hospital in time. Given Bob's leg condition, it must have been quite a struggle. Bob had always been fond of me, treating me like his own daughter, and I regularly took Alan to visit him, even without Zach asking. The in-laws' house was about a 40-minute drive from our home. Every time we visited, "Thank you for coming all this way," Bob would say with a kind smile. Alan and I both loved Bob and, despite the distance, always wanted to visit him again and again. Hearing that Bob had collapsed, I was filled with anxiety, but Zach only mentioned putting him in a facility in a matter-of-fact tone, which irritated me. Just handle it, I'm busy with work, okay? Wait a minute. Zach cut the call quickly after saying his piece. The idea of putting Bob in a facility was unthinkable to me. Unless it was Bob's own wish, it seemed like Zach was just deciding to put him in a facility on his own. After much thought, I decided to take care of Bob myself as soon as he recovered. When I arrived at the hospital where Bob had been sent, he was in the hospital room and had already regained his consciousness. Bob was over 70 but had struggled to continue the family's farming business despite his leg issues. Both Zach and I had asked Bob to rest, but he insisted on going to the field that day. Maggie, sorry for troubling you. No, please, just don't strain yourself anymore. All right. It seemed Bob had learned his lesson this time and stopped going to the field after being discharged. Bob's field was no longer used for crops, leaving only an empty land. Though it could be revived with care, the land would probably be passed on to Zach, his only son, who I doubted would take up farming. I felt sorry for the neglected field but thought it was for the best if it meant Bob wouldn't strain himself further. After that, I started caring for Bob, visiting the in-laws' house about 3 times a week. I also began working part-time at the grocery store around that time, juggling work, childcare, caregiving, and household chores. For childcare, I switched Alan from kindergarten to daycare with extended hours, managing to make time. I worked 4 mornings a week till after lunch and then went to the in-laws' house. After caring for Bob, I would pick up Alan from daycare, go home, and make dinner. It was very challenging initially due to inexperience. Though it became slightly easier as I got used to it, I didn't realize how tired I was becoming. I had no time to talk to Zach and was overwhelmed just dealing with the tasks at hand. 10 years passed in this manner, and I turned 45, Zach 50. By then, Alan had become a teenager and often rebelled against me. But I saw this as a sign of his growing independence and, while feeling a bit lonely, I was happy about his growth. However, Alan never showed any defiance towards Zach. In fact, he hardly ever spoke to him. Zach had abandoned any childcare responsibilities from Alan's birth, leaving everything to me, so it seemed Alan didn't really think of Zach as his dad. It was around this time that our loveless and distant family relationship reached a critical point. The catalyst was a call from my sister, Nicole. "Hi, Maggie. I just got back from a trip to Hawaii with friends and I've got some souvenirs for you. Can I drop by your place?" Nicole, my elder sister by 3 years, has always been reckless with money and had a fiery temperament, making us quite incompatible. She always wore flashy makeup and was more beautiful than me. I was suspicious of her intention to give me souvenirs but couldn't refuse her kind gesture and agreed. When Nicole came over the weekend, she handed me the souvenirs, which I realized were not from Hawaii and were clearly common sweets available locally. I chose to stay silent, thinking that pointing this out would only upset her. "Hey, Maggie. I'm short on cash this month. Can you lend me some money?" Suddenly visiting with a fake souvenir and now this, I wondered what she was up to. "Lend you money? Why?" I suspected it was just Nicole's usual spending habits leaving her broke. "Well, I've been feeling unwell lately. The doctor said I might need to be hospitalized. But I don't have insurance and can't afford the hospital and treatment costs." Nicole, sounding feeble, left me speechless. What kind of illness required hospitalization? I silently stared at Nicole, who looked at me pleadingly. "Okay. Just pay me back after your treatment." "Thanks. Sisters are the best." Nicole's face lit up as she shook my hand. Despite our differences, she was my sister and I wanted her to get well soon if she was ill. "By the way, when is Zach getting back?" Once Nicole knew I'd lend her the money, she casually asked this. "Zach just went to the grocery store." "Oh, I see. I'll just say hi then and leave." Right then, the front door opened and Zach returned. "Hey, Zach." "Oh, Nicole. You're here." "Yes, just had something to discuss with Maggie. But I'm done now and will be leaving." As Nicole stood up and passed by Zach, she seemed to whisper something in his ear. After Nicole left, "What did Nicole say to you earlier?" I asked, but "Nothing important." Zach evaded the question. I remained curious but soon forgot about it. The discovery of Zach and Nicole's affair happened a month later. I planned to visit Bob that day, but work got extended, so I postponed my visit to the in-laws' house to the next day and went home as usual. Alan was at the library, so only Zach should have been home. "Why are there women's shoes here?" As I took off my shoes at the entrance, I noticed a familiar pair of heels. They were the high heels Nicole wore over the weekend. Entering the house, the living room was empty, which relieved me momentarily. But then, from the bedroom, I heard faint, indiscreet voices of Zach and Nicole. "What are they doing?" I considered confronting them right then but hesitated at the last moment. What if Zach demands a divorce after being exposed? Alan wouldn't want to live with Zach. But I wasn't confident I could afford Alan's education fees alone. If we were to divorce, I wanted to wait until Alan had graduated from college. Frustrated, I decided to leave the house, pretending I saw nothing. Instead, I gathered evidence of the affair, taking photos of their traces and secretly saving the exchanges between Zach and Nicole from his mobile phone. It appeared they had been having an affair for about 6 months. Despite the anger boiling inside me, I reminded myself it was for Alan and endured, not exposing the affair. Another 15 years have passed since then, and Alan is now part of the working world. After graduating from college and leaving his first job early, Alan set up his own business and is now working hard as its president. And as the story goes, I had retired from the grocery store, but I was working a little at Alan's company. I had been giving Nicole money for her treatment bit by bit, but when her requests became too persistent, I grew reluctant to lend more and started ignoring her calls. In fact, the signs of Nicole and Zach's affair had disappeared about a year after it came to light. Zach probably got bored of Nicole. He changed his mind and chose to stay married to me. Knowing this, I couldn't bring myself to pursue the matter of the affair anymore and decided to pretend it never happened. But I realized my naivety when I heard about Bob's death. I got the news about Bob from Zach during the day. Bob had lived a long life until 95, but I was deeply shocked by the loss of Bob, who I had cared for so long. Bob, unlike Zach, was kind and considerate, so his passing felt like losing my own parent. Yet even then, Zach said, "Dad seems to have accumulated a lot of wealth, so that's exciting." Laughing. I was so angry that I thought of giving Zach a piece of my mind, but then I heard a woman's laughter from nearby. Oops, did she realize we're together? I was chilled to the bone at the sound of Nicole's voice. Had Nicole and Zach's relationship not ended after all? For 15 years, they had continued their affair without my knowledge. Realizing this, they seemed like an incomprehensible entity to me. "I'm going to marry your sister. ATM is no longer needed." I could hear the mocking laughter over the phone. But I didn't let out a sound of surprise. I thought if I played into their hands, it would weaken my position, and by now, I had not an iota of love left for Zach. "Okay, brace yourself," I replied calmly, but inside, anger was boiling over. Zach, who dumped all the childcare, elder care, and housework on me, was enjoying an affair with Nicole. And Nicole too, after borrowing all that money from me, she slept with my husband and even called me an ATM at the end. It was unforgivable. "You're okay with us divorcing, right?" When Zach pressed me, I simply nodded yes. On the other end of the phone, the two of them cheered. "Enjoy it while you can. There's no way they won't get their comeuppance for belittling me like this." I bit my lip hard. After Bob's funeral, I filed for divorce as promised. When I informed Zach, he seemed so delighted that it felt like he was doing it on purpose. "Now that we're divorced, you should leave this house as soon as possible." "Me leave?" I asked, surprised, and Zach nodded as if it were obvious. "I'm going to live with Nicole, and you'll be living alone. This house is too big for one person." Anger turned to disbelief, and I said, "Okay." Too weary to argue, and agreed to Zach's demands. Though upset, I had already considered my living situation before the divorce. Leaving our home, I headed to Alan's, who was living independently. I had contacted Alan beforehand, and he welcomed his mom, who had just left Zach, with open arms. He's truly a kind son. I resolved to work even harder at Alan's company. A few days later, a man claiming to be a lawyer contacted me. When I went to the specified location, Zach, Nicole, and the lawyer were seated. "I am in possession of a will left by Zach's dad," the lawyer said, and took out the will signed by Bob from his bag. I was surprised as I didn't know Bob had left a will. As Zach's only child, he was the legal heir to Bob's assets. Being no longer Zach's wife, I had no claim to any inheritance. Why was I called then? As I wondered, the lawyer read the will. Its contents were astounding. Bob had left half of his assets to me. That meant the field Bob owned was now part of my estate. While Zach would inherit the other half due to his legal share, he had surely not expected me to inherit anything. "Why does Maggie get half of the inheritance? I'm his only son, I should receive it all." Dad was very grateful to Maggie for her selfless care, even though they were not related by blood. He meant it as a thank you. Bob. I was deeply moved by Bob's thoughtfulness. What the heck is this? I thought we could finally relax with the inheritance. Nicole twisted her face in frustration. The lawyer then mentioned that Bob's will had also left all of his debts to Zach, but it seemed Zach and Nicole were too upset to hear that part. I was overwhelmed with gratitude towards Bob, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Thank you, Bob. Seeing me in tears, the two of them seemed to grow even angrier, but the lawyer concluded. That is the content of the will. With that, Zach and Nicole seemed to snap back to reality. I'm not happy about losing half, but hey, we still have half of the inheritance left. Gotta thank the law for that. Zach said as he patted Nicole's shoulder, who nodded in agreement, right. Well, we'll be leaving now. We won't have anything to do with you anymore, so take care, they laughed loudly as they left. I returned to Alan's house, savoring Bob's last act of kindness. After receiving the inheritance from Bob, I continued working at Alan's place without incident, and before I knew it, 2 months had passed. That's when Zach called me, on a Sunday. Alan and I were both off work, relaxing at home, but my mobile phone started ringing insistently. Zach! The air froze between me and Alan as we realized it was Zach calling. Why is Dad calling? He abandoned you, and now what does he want? You don't have to answer. Alan said so, but the phone kept ringing persistently. Irritated, I decided to answer to silence Zach. What is it, calling me repeatedly? You said we wouldn't have anything to do with each other ever again. I answered with a tone of annoyance, but Zach seemed not to hear me and started talking frantically. Hey, what's going on? Why are you working at Alan's company? And why is Alan's company being featured on TV? And what's with showing your fancy house? Zach's near-hysterical voice echoed through the phone, causing Alan to frown. You saw the TV. I realized why Zach was calling all of a sudden. Recently, a TV station had interviewed Zach's gym, and it was broadcast yesterday. Alan's gym, which combines a gym and cafe, had caught the TV station's interest due to its novelty. Since opening, the gym had rapidly increased its membership, and Alan appeared on TV as a successful young entrepreneur, even showcasing our home as Zach mentioned. The house we live in now, Alan's home, is quite luxurious, far surpassing the neighboring houses in size. So Zach saw Alan's house and was shocked enough to call. What do you mean you guys are living in such a big house? Over here, Nicole used up all of Dad's inheritance, and I even got left with his debts. Damn it, I didn't hear about that from the lawyer back then. Zach yelled angrily over the phone. But back then, the lawyer did mention that Bob had left all his debts to Zach. It wasn't my fault that Zach had not listened, and it was none of my business. It's none of my business, Zach. The lawyer clearly mentioned it, and it's your responsibility for not paying attention. Besides, you knew about Nicole's spending habits even before marrying her, right? I gave her money for treatment and haven't been repaid yet. This just proves to me that you and Nicole are the worst kind of people, quick to betray someone you should trust. In response to my correct argument, Zach remained silent, unable to say anything. Besides, isn't it all your fault for cheating on me in the first place? I just don't understand why I have to be blamed. I let out my pent-up frustrations, feeling somewhat relieved. Realizing he couldn't blame me, Zach suddenly changed his tone to a pleading one. Please, Maggie. I'm begging you, lend me some money. I was supposed to get a retirement fund this year, but I got fired, and all I'm left with are Dad's debts. Nicole left after we argued about money. How am I supposed to live now? You're my only hope. I admit I was wrong about everything. I apologize. Just give me a little bit of Dad's inheritance. You're living a good life with Alan, right? Think of it as helping someone out, okay? His nerve to beg his ex-wife for money after cheating and leaving her was beyond comprehension. Alan, who had been listening to the conversation, looked at me, seemingly wanting to say something. I handed my mobile phone to Alan. Alan turned on the speaker and firmly said to Zach, "Dad, you betrayed Mom and married Nicole, right? And I heard you never took care of me since I was born. I don't have any memories of playing with you after I became aware. It was always just Mom and me. On Parents' Day and Sports Day, it was always just Mom who came. That's why I'm helping Mom with my company and living with her. Why should I, who you never did anything for, lend you money? My only parent is Mom. I won't give you a single dollar." Alan's strong, businesslike tone choked me up. I could sense Zach gasping on the other end of the phone. "Alan, how could you say that to your dad? Fine, I won't rely on you guys ever again. Don't insult me." With that, Zach hung up. We looked at the silent mobile phone and then burst out laughing together. "Zach begged us for money, and now he says he won't have anything to do with us. What an idiot." "Yeah. Dad has always been like that, getting angry without thinking ahead." As we discussed Zach's foolishness, the phone rang again. It was Zach. He probably wanted to ask for money, despite saying he wouldn't contact us again. Fed up, I blocked Zach's contact. "That's it. Now that fool can't bother us anymore." "Yeah. Thanks, Mom." His gratitude for being raised seemed implicit. "I should be the one thanking you. You've given me such a great life. No matter how old you get, you're still my precious son." We reaffirmed our bond as mother and son, grateful for each other's presence in our spacious home. A few days later, my sister Nicole called me. Her request was almost identical to what Zach had said. I couldn't fathom lending more money to Nicole, who hadn't even repaid what she owed me. In fact, I hadn't yet demanded compensation for her affair with Zach, so I successfully sued both of them for damages through a lawyer. They ended up getting divorced after being married. Their marriage only lasted for 2 months. Zach was even worse off than Nicole. The negative inheritance he received from Dad was too substantial. Bob had borrowed a lot of money for farming, managing it all by himself. I hadn't known about it. While caring for Bob, he often complained about Zach. Bob was able to forgive Zach for not taking over the farming business, but the fact that he didn't take care of Alan and not visit his own father was unforgivable. He was also furious with the way Zach treated me, and I always tried to soothe him, saying it was okay. If kind Bob was that angry, Zach must have been quite a negligent son. All of Zach's expected retirement funds were gone due to his dismissal for misconduct. Rumor has it he even tried to embezzle money from his bank to pay off his debts. Had he just worked quietly until the end, he would have received his retirement money. His greed was his downfall. Now, while receiving a pension, he seems to be working 3 part-time jobs to pay off his debts. Starting a new job at 65 and being taught by younger people as a newcomer must be shattering his pride. Although he has worked as a bank employee for many years, his part-time job as a new employee involves a lot of odd jobs. A hard adjustment for someone who never did housework, childcare, or elder care. He'll likely give up soon enough. For Zach, who neglected his son and cheated with Nicole for years, it's a fitting punishment. I hope he manages until the end. As for me, I'm still working energetically at Alan's workplace. The staff, who are around my child's age, treat me very kindly. Our workplace is always full of smiles, attracting many customers. Alan recently got engaged to a girl a year younger than him and introduced her to me. She's a wonderful, sensible young lady. Well respected at work. I was planning to move out when they married, but she insisted we live together. I'm grateful for her kindness and looking forward to our future together. Right. I forgot. She exclaimed, rummaging through her small bag to pull out a white envelope. What's this? It's a letter I got from Grandma. She told me to read it in secret, away from Caleb. I took the letter from Scarlett. Just then, my sister arrived to pick Scarlett up, and I handed her over. After saying goodbye to Scarlett, I quietly opened the letter. Glancing over it casually, I was shocked. What? You're kidding, right? The content was hard to believe. Rushed, I went back to where Caleb was. As soon as I returned, Caleb spoke in a whiny tone. Hey Evelyn, I'm thirsty. Could you get me some juice or something? Ignoring his request, I swiftly flipped back the comforter and reached for Caleb's pants. What? Evelyn? Without hesitation, I pulled down his pants. What the heck are you doing all of a sudden? Caleb yelled, hastily trying to pull his pants back up. I sighed at the unfolding scene. Looks like Mom's prediction was right. Hey! What's the deal with suddenly pulling down someone's pants? Are you taking advantage of my inability to move? That's awful, isn't it? Caleb looked up at me, perplexed. Indeed, it was wrong to do it without saying anything. But without that, I wouldn't have been able to confirm it. My name is Evelyn, 32 years old. I graduated and joined the company, and it's been 10 years. With this tenure, I have a stable income and am trusted with various responsibilities at work. I've been leading a fulfilling life, but there was one worry. It's about my husband, Caleb, whom I've been married to for 5 years. Our encounter was at a friend's wedding. We just happened to sit at the same table. Ah, weddings are wonderful, aren't they? Really, they both look so happy. We didn't talk much, but I was impressed by how genuinely happy Caleb seemed for the bride and groom. Later, through a friend, Caleb made the first move, and we started dating smoothly. I want to marry you. After Caleb's straightforward proposal, we got married. The surprise came later. What? You've been divorced before? And you have a child? Yeah, and, you see, my ex-wife is demanding child support. Despite his divorce, his ability to genuinely celebrate others' weddings was, in a way, impressive. About the child support, isn't it just better to pay it? That's part of being a father, right? No, the thing is, I'm out of money this month. What? I had a sneaking suspicion that Caleb's income wasn't great. But I never imagined I'd end up paying child support for a child I didn't know with my salary. I rushed into marriage. I didn't regret marrying him, to be honest. But the real issue was Caleb's carelessness with money and his failure to see the problem. I quit my job again. He'd say with a nonchalant smile, time and time again. You quit. What are we going to do now? It'll be fine. You're working too, Evelyn. We'll manage somehow. He was the definition of relying on others. I didn't want him to depend on my money. Did he marry me for my money? I sometimes wondered. But putting money aside, Caleb wasn't a bad husband. He was a bit unconventional, but that was what made life exciting and fun. Feeling like something sweet. Want to hit the convenience store? Now? Yeah. On a weekday night, on a whim, we'd end up at the convenience store, just for sweets. All right. I'm not sleeping until I beat this game tonight. Okay. Sometimes I'd end up pulling an all-nighter with him over a game. It was honestly tough at our age, but I didn't dislike his spirit. That's why I couldn't leave Caleb, despite his financial irresponsibility and job instability. He wasn't cheating, at least. I thought, as I let things slide, and before I knew it, here we were. But then, just the other day, I saw it. An unknown young woman sitting in the passenger seat of Caleb's car. I, who had prided myself on believing he would never cheat, felt like I'd been hit over the head from behind. The shock of Caleb's potential infidelity amidst my complete trust. Should I confront him directly or act covertly? After much thought, I consulted my sister. Married with an 8-year-old daughter, she had an immediate answer. Obviously, you gather evidence quietly. She was adamant that there was no benefit in alerting him without solid proof. So, following her advice, I focused on gathering evidence. Eventually, it became clear that Caleb was frequently seeing a woman. Her name is Abigail. She was the daughter of the owner of a private clinic where Caleb was a client. They mostly met on Thursday afternoons, driving around in Caleb's car. And I managed to capture them entering a hotel together several times. I thought he was honest about women at least. Disappointment hit me before anger. Married life wasn't unpleasant, but it wasn't easy either. In addition to the child support, I found out about his debt. Both were from before our marriage. Things I should have known about or were none of my business. He married me without disclosing these facts. Wasn't it almost like being deceived? There were times when I thought that. And I took pride in the fact that he was faithful. I never imagined even that would be betrayed. I'll confront him with everything and then leave. Caleb, carefree and nonchalant as ever, probably had no clue I knew about his secret. I wanted to give him a surprise for once. So, I was contemplating the day to reveal everything. Soon after, I received a shocking message from Caleb. Sorry, I had an accident. I might not be able to move my body anymore. I left work immediately and rushed to the hospital Caleb had mentioned. It was the clinic owned by Abigail's father. Feeling faint-hearted, I even called my mother to come with me. Are you Caleb's wife? Please, this way. I never imagined meeting this person under such circumstances. The one guiding us at the reception was Caleb's affair partner, Abigail. I had seen her face several times from behind or in profile over the past few months, but facing her directly like this felt surreal. Led to the room, I found Caleb lying in the bed. Caleb! Oh, Evelyn. You came. His voice and expression seemed good. My mother and I exchanged a relieved look. The message had startled us, but he seemed to have only minor injuries. What a relief, I thought. But then, the doctor's next words left me speechless. There's a high possibility that Caleb has become hemiplegic. Hemiplegic? It means, in Caleb's case, the right half of his body might not move anymore. Is there no chance of recovery? The doctor closed his eyes as if in deep thought. It's difficult. Then said. I found myself sobbing uncontrollably, supported by my mother. After calming down a bit, Caleb began to speak hesitantly. This hospital, because of its facilities, can't accommodate long-term patients, so I'll be sent home. But what about thorough examinations? Your right side isn't moving, right? There could be other reasons. Well, I'm tired from the accident today. We'll revisit this. Caleb's words, somewhat hesitant, worried me, but I didn't want to push him. Reluctantly, I had my mother help me take Caleb back to our apartment. After laying Caleb in bed, I went out to the entrance to see off my mother. Sorry for the sudden call today. Thank you. It's okay. But it seems the timing to confront him about the affair has vanished. Indeed. What will you do now? If Caleb is truly hemiplegic, I can't abandon him just because he cheated. I'll think about it. Remember, you're the most important to me. It seemed like my mother was advising me not to sacrifice myself for Caleb. Thanks. She seemed to want to say more, but left with a complex expression on her face. The next day, my life caring for Caleb began. Although he was hemiplegic, the other side of his body worked, so the need for care was less than I expected. However, soon, taking care of Caleb's mental health as he couldn't go outside became more challenging. I'm just so bored. Surprisingly, he didn't complain much about his immobility, but his frustration seemed to stem from boredom. He would summon me frequently for trivial things, like wanting juice or needing his back scratched. These were minor tasks, but the constant demands wore me down. During such moments, my sister's daughter, my niece Scarlett, suddenly decided to visit our home. Scarlett and Caleb hardly know each other. Why she would visit under these circumstances was initially a mystery to me. When I asked my sister why, her reply was nonchalant. Obviously, because I am worried about you. Even Scarlett at 8 years old is concerned about you. That's sweet of Scarlett. I'd join if I could, but I'm swamped with work, and it's all I can do to arrange transportation. Mom seems busy too, but at least with Scarlett around, Caleb won't be able to throw tantrums in front of a child. Her prediction was spot on. With Scarlett present, perhaps due to his male pride or just plain embarrassment, Caleb drastically reduced how often he called for me. This gave me a chance to chat with Scarlett about school life, the latest elementary school trends, and all sorts of girl talk. But why does enjoyable time always fly by so quickly? As evening approached, it was time for Scarlett to leave. My sister called to pick her up, and though it was hard to part, it was time to say goodbye to Scarlett. Okay, Scarlett. Your mother will be here soon, so let's wait outside. Okay. As we headed to the entrance, feeling the reluctance, Scarlett suddenly seemed to remember something. Right. I forgot. She rummaged through her small bag and pulled out a white envelope. What's this? It's a letter I got from Grandma. She told me to read it in secret, away from Caleb. From Mom? Thank you. I received the letter from Scarlett. Right then, my sister arrived to pick Scarlett up, so I handed her over. After seeing Scarlett off, I quietly looked inside the envelope. It wasn't mailed but delivered through Scarlett, which seemed overly cautious. What could it contain? I casually read through and was stunned. What? You're kidding, right? The content was too astonishing to believe immediately. But my mother wouldn't fabricate such a lie. If this is true, I need to verify it. I hurried back to Caleb. As soon as I returned, Caleb spoke in a coddling tone. Did Scarlett leave? Yes, my sister just picked her up. Got it. Hey Evelyn, I'm thirsty. Wake me up and get me some juice or something. Ignoring his request, I swiftly pulled back the comforter and reached for Caleb's pants. What? Evelyn? Without hesitation, I pulled his pants down. What are you doing all of a sudden? Caleb yelled, frantically trying to pull his pants back up. I sighed at the scene unfolding before me. It seems Mom was right. Hey! What's the deal with suddenly pulling down someone's pants? Are you taking advantage of my inability to move? That's awful, isn't it? Caleb looked up at me, bewildered. Indeed, doing it without saying anything was wrong. But I wouldn't have been able to confirm it otherwise. Hey! Are you listening? Caleb raised his voice again, seeing me silent and looking down. Seriously. This uncertainty about the future is unbearable. Maybe it's time to break up? I said his thoughts out loud, and Caleb looked at me in surprise. Oh, you seem almost happy about it? Your face is giving you away. Caleb, looking flustered, covered his mouth. Happy? No way. But maybe you're right. With this condition, I'll just be a burden. Maybe it's better we part ways. Caleb sighed heavily, exuding a sense of resignation. I don't mind, you know? I'll take care of you. We vowed at our wedding, remember? In sickness and in health. Eh? No, but... Besides, it's not all bad. We can still talk like before. And now, I won't have to fret over your affairs anymore. Eh? I smirked mischievously. Oh, me? An affair? His eyes darted around. His lie transparent. Don't worry. You may have been capable before, but now, you can't move by yourself. You won't be able to cheat anymore. Now you're all mine. Caleb let out a small yelp and turned pale. Evelyn, actually, I was planning to leave you. That's fine. Leave it to me. But I feel terrible about this. Don't feel guilty. We're a couple, after all. Despite my reassuring smile, Caleb trembled like a cornered deer. But just rest for now. I'll go prepare dinner. Caleb couldn't say anything more. I left the room. Certainly, I'd cornered Caleb. He'd surely take some action. I had believed Caleb was truly hemiplegic. It was the clinic of Abigail's father. I wanted to have it checked at a larger hospital, but Caleb resisted, so it never happened. Now I understand why he was so reluctant about hospitals and treatment. Immediately after leaving the room, I listened at the door. I'd left it slightly ajar, so Caleb wouldn't notice. I couldn't see inside, but I could hear everything Caleb did. "Help! I'm in trouble!" Soon, I heard him speaking to someone. He was on the phone. Speaking softly, perhaps wary of me. "That's what she said. Before bringing up divorce, she insisted we won't separate. What should I do? Escape? Impossible. I'm too scared. She must know about you and me. She's unusually persistent about infidelity. She must know already." I heard it all. Now it was clear. Caleb was on the phone with his affair partner, Abigail. "Please! Say it's a call from the hospital. Get me admitted somewhere else, any hospital. Otherwise, I don't know what Evelyn might do." As Caleb pleaded with the person on the phone, I knocked on the door. "Caleb? Are you on the phone? May I come in?" "Oh, I'll hang up now." After waiting a moment, I entered to find Caleb looking paler than before, lying in bed. "You look worse than before. Are you okay?" "Oh, I'm fine. Well, maybe not. Can you take me to the hospital?" "Of course, that sounds serious. I'll contact the hospital right away." "Ah, thank you." He looked genuinely relieved. Thinking this was his ticket out. He's sorely mistaken. The real game is just beginning. I'll expose everything about Caleb and Abigail at the hospital. Upon arrival, Abigail greeted us. "Caleb, are you okay?" "Abigail. Thanks. I'm feeling a bit off. After what happened, it's understandable." Abigail smiled knowingly and looked at Caleb tenderly. "Can I rest for a bit? I might even need to be admitted." He's not even a doctor to be making such decisions. But Abigail nodded understandingly and led us to a private room. "We don't usually do admissions, but my father will come to check on you when he's available. Please wait here until then." About half an hour later, Abigail returned with a doctor. I had met him before. He's the clinic's director, Abigail's father. "You're feeling unwell?" "Yes." Their exchange of glances was awkward. As Abigail's father raised his stethoscope to his ears, I raised my hand. "Let's cut the act, shall we?" "What?" Caleb, Abigail, and her father all froze, except for me. "Evelyn, what are you suddenly saying?" Ignoring Caleb's protest, I grabbed his pants like before and yanked them down forcefully. "Whoa! What are you doing? Stop it!" Caleb scrambled to pull his pants back up. "As I said before, something's off, right? Are you worried that if I become hemiplegic and useless as a man?" "I see. You were only after my body. I'm disappointed." Caleb pretended to be upset, not noticing the expressions of the others in the room. "After your body? Unfortunately, I'm not as lewd as you guys." "What did you say? You still haven't realized?" "Realized what?" As Caleb tilted his head, Abigail whispered in his ear. Finally understanding, Caleb's eyes widened in shock. "No, this is, well, that. Hemiplegic? You move too quickly for that. Everything's been exposed. Why keep up this poor act?" The letter from my mother had only a few lines. "I've looked into it, and there's a high chance Caleb's hemiplegia is an act, perhaps a lie to leave Evelyn. Maybe try pulling down his pants to see his reaction?" Following my mother's advice led to this revelation. In a panic, Caleb, who was supposedly unable to move his right hand, easily pulled up his pants. "So it was all an act from the start?" "No, that's not." "Explain everything." Sweating profusely, Caleb complied. The day of the accident, the person riding next to Caleb in the car was Abigail. They were in the midst of an affair. "The injuries were minor for both of us, but the car was badly damaged." I thought if the police got involved, Evelyn would find out. So I figured if I pretended to be severely injured, I could cover it up. The absurdity of it all left me speechless. Did you think you could keep up such a ridiculous life forever? No, well. Or was it all to hide your affair? That's not it. Before Caleb could respond, Abigail interrupted. Caleb was just trying to spare you the pain of a breakup. After all, finding out about an affair during a drive would be humiliating. So he told a kind lie about being hemiplegia, hoping for a smooth separation. Kind? How is cheating with someone much younger than himself, and then lying about it, kind? Stop it. Our love is real. Abigail said this proudly, but Caleb, shrinking in the background, looked like his elaborate lie had caught up to him. Is that so? Then you should have been upfront about it. Right, Abigail's father? Abigail's father flinched. His forehead glistened with more sweat than Caleb's. Well. The moment I realized the hemiplegia was a lie, I had a lot to say to you. Me? What might that be? Abigail's father looked at me with a forced smile. Perhaps he couldn't abandon his daughter. I felt sorry for him, but as a doctor, he did something he shouldn't have done. I guess you just listened to your daughters, please, but how did you feel watching me break down in tears? Don't you have any professional pride? Wasn't it empty to go as far as forging a medical report? Abigail's father seemed to catch his breath. He began to speak, carefully choosing his words. That wasn't forgery. It was a diagnostic error. How could such an obviously healthy man be mistakenly diagnosed as hemiplegia? He probably wanted to insist it was a mistake, not malicious forgery. Well, as for me, it doesn't really matter. Fortunately, I have relatives in both the medical and legal fields, so I'll be consulting with them. What? You can't. Abigail's father's complexion changed. Understandably so. For a private practitioner, reputation and client reviews are crucial. If it became known that he dirtied his hands as a doctor just to unite his daughter with her affair partner, the clinic's reputation would undoubtedly hit rock bottom. Please, have mercy. There's no mercy here. I'll have my lawyer discuss the details with you later. Since Caleb seems to be in good health, please go back to your duties. He was hardly in the state of mind for work, but it was true that other patients were waiting. The calls of the nurses had been audible for a while. Yet, Abigail's father, who had been reluctant to leave, was finally forced out by me, barely able to walk, and exited the room. That left Abigail, Caleb, and me. In the silent room, I reconsidered the situation. On the day of the accident, Caleb was with Abigail, engaged in their affair. Right after the accident, given the proximity to the scene, they sought medical attention at Abigail's father's clinic. Perhaps it was then that Abigail conceived the idea. Could she keep Caleb for herself this way? It's unclear if Caleb had contemplated divorce, but it's unlikely all this was just to conceal an affair. It's more probable that Abigail persuaded him. For Caleb, who always wanted to quit his job, the allure of a doctor's daughter, a sign of wealth, was irresistible. Moreover, claiming hemiplegia would serve as an excuse to leave his job. He probably thought that if he used this as a pretext to break up before the affair was exposed, everything would neatly resolve. But that was a flawed plan from the start. I knew about their affair even before Caleb's accident. Though I lost the opportunity to confront them amidst the confusion of the accident, now that their lies were exposed, I had all the leverage. There was plenty of evidence. Well then. I looked slowly at the two of them. Caleb was sitting on the bed, and Abigail stood beside him. Regarding what comes next, I want a divorce. Surprised by my statement, Caleb and Abigail exchanged looks. A divorce, is that okay? Okay or not, I've known about your affair for a long time. I've been preparing to leave since then. Caleb looked conflicted, and Abigail's eyes sparkled. So Caleb and I can be together. We don't have to meet in secret anymore. Despite their bold meetings, it seemed they had been trying to keep it discreet. Yes, after we divorce, you're free to do as you please. However, there are conditions for the divorce. Conditions? Abigail frowned in confusion. Yes, don't worry, it's nothing serious. First, I'll be seeking compensation from both Caleb and Abigail. Additionally, there will be no division of assets. I'll be keeping all the savings. That's all. Isn't that a bit unfair, Evelyn? Unfair? Have you forgotten that for the 5 years we've been married, I've covered most of our living expenses? That alone is more than the savings. Caleb, notorious for his laziness, has never held a job for long. His income was unstable and significantly lower than his peers. Moreover, he was a big spender, still not having paid off debts from before our marriage. Sure, Evelyn has helped me, but I've been working hard too. He seemed dissatisfied with the idea of handing over all the savings. Caleb stuttered and struggled to find the right words. I didn't want to prolong this confrontation and was considering setting a later date to talk things through when, unexpectedly, Abigail came to Caleb's rescue. Caleb! We've come this far, haven't we? Don't worry about money. Dad's here, and I'll take care of everything. More than anything, I want us to freely express our love as soon as possible. Abigail. Love conquers all. In front of his soon-to-be ex-wife, the audacity of their display was astounding. What did Abigail see in him? That was a lingering question, but her intervention wrapped things up. All right, I'll leave the divorce papers, compensation, and the specifics to my lawyer. I'll send your belongings to Abigail's place. I suppose we won't be seeing each other anymore. Well then. Take care. The two, already acting like a couple, cozied up to each other. I remembered something I had almost forgotten to mention. Oh, right. Don't forget to keep up with the child support payments. And try to at least make the interest payments on your debt. Abigail looked up at Caleb, standing beside her, in disbelief. What, child support? Debt? What's that about? Didn't you know? He has a child with his ex-wife. Oh, and don't get me wrong. I didn't steal him from his previous marriage. Caleb was already divorced when we met. A bit agitated. And the debt? Abigail asked. It was there even before we married. So, I don't know what it's for. How much is it? About $30,000, I believe. I smiled as I informed her, and Abigail's face went pale. Understandably so. With the added burden of paying me compensation, plus child support and debt, it's enough to make one feel faint. But we can work hard together to pay it off, right? Abigail, trying to motivate herself, clenched her fist and turned to face Caleb. Caleb. Yeah! And he nodded vaguely. Good for you, Caleb. You've got such a positive partner in Abigail. That should motivate you to find a new job. New job? Abigail's eyes were empty. Yes, because after this incident, Caleb hastily resigned. Now he's officially unemployed. He has no qualifications, so getting a full-time job might be challenging. But love conquers all, right? You'll manage. Abigail muttered under her breath. But still, there's that issue, she said. Abigail was clearly in shock, and Caleb was panicking. I waved goodbye to the two of them and left the hospital. Later, the divorce was finalized without issue. To my slight concern, Abigail's father paid all the compensation, probably fearing that I might spill everything. Considering the potential fallout if this incident became public, he probably thought it was a small price to pay. This cleared all obstacles for Caleb and Abigail. However, they didn't remarry immediately. Caleb was pushing for it. Right away. But, well, maybe. Abigail was hesitating. Furthermore, the two of them were constantly fighting, with Caleb never finding a job and Abigail reluctant to make their relationship official. Even if you think someone is your destiny, it's understandable to hesitate when faced with such a hopeless case. In my situation, by the time I realized everything, I had already grown too attached to Caleb. If it wasn't for that, I would have left him much sooner. Thanks to all this, I'm now enjoying a peaceful life for the first time in a while. At first, I thought I might feel lonely. Caleb, despite his many problems, was good at entertaining and pampering people. But once he was gone, I realized how much more comfortable life could be. No more sudden demands for sweets, no more all-night gaming sessions. Some might find that exciting, but it was too much for my 30s body. Now I can take care of myself, live each day with ease, and not always on the edge. No more stretching beyond my limits. I'm looking forward to a life that fits me, without overextending or pushing too hard. Happy birthday! Make sure you eat it all. What was presented in front of me was a surprise birthday cake made by my mother-in-law, Kyla. It was extravagantly topped with whipped cream, so that the strawberries were buried under a mountain of it. The moment I saw it, I caught my breath. I've mentioned I'm allergic to dairy, haven't I? Oh, did you? It's fine. Your body will get used to it if you eat it. It's life-threatening for me. Haven't you been intentionally using allergens in your cooking? Stop complaining. Be grateful for what I've prepared. Kyla had always found reasons to summon my husband Alan and me to her house, eager to feed us her home cooking. However, the dishes she prepared were invariably made with dairy products, which I couldn't consume. Unable to eat much, I sipped tea while Kyla and Alan dined merrily, a situation that left me feeling frustrated. Yet, I endured without a frown. However, it was my birthday party she hosted that would lead to Kyla's misfortune. I'm Tiana, 30 years old. After dating for 2 years, Alan and I got married this summer. We had lived together for a year before our marriage, so life as newlyweds was not much different than before. But one thing had been bothering me since we started dating: Kyla's presence. She doted on her son Alan and seemed to want to be near him at all times. She frequently barged into our apartment where we lived together. If the relationship were good, it might have been natural to accept her, but our relationship was far from amicable. She always focused on Alan, interrupting my words and enjoying conversations with her son. Having never interacted with the parents of anyone I dated before, I questioned her behavior, thinking it was just how things were. But there were things that struck me as odd. Tiana, let's go to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park for the long weekend next month. That sounds great. The foliage should be beautiful, and it's been a while since we last visited. That sounds fun. I want to come too. Then let's go, the 3 of us. Mom and us. Tiana, that's okay with you, right? Yeah, sure. Tiana, you're so kind. We need to pull it down on the calendar as soon as we get home. In this way, the intrusive Kyla would try to tag along on our trips. She suggested numerous hotels to stay at, and before I knew it, she and Alan were making plans together. Once the plan was set, Tiana, could you handle the bookings? She'd say, leaving the rest of the arrangements to me. And when it was time to depart for the trip, she wouldn't even take out her wallet for anything, from the travel expenses to meals and even souvenirs. At that time, Alan and I weren't officially married yet. Can we split the cost? I'd do the same for your parents if they needed anything. When he said that, I couldn't object strongly, so I had no choice but to agree and pay. Despite the frustrations with Kyla, Alan was always kind to me, and we spent peaceful times together when it was just the 2 of us. So, when he proposed, I happily decided to marry him. However, even after our marriage, Kyla's behavior was something I couldn't ignore. On our days off, as we relaxed at home, Alan's mobile phone would ring. Oh, Mom. It's you. Did you make too much food again? Okay, I'll ask Tiana. Putting the call on hold, Alan would ask me. Mom's made too much for dinner, she's asking if we want to come. That's okay, right? Again? We just went through the same routine 3 days ago, visiting Kyla's house. And we've already been over there 8 times this month. Come on. It'll save you the trouble of cooking. I'll let her know we're coming. Wait. I didn't agree to this. I've already told her, and hung up. Let's get ready and leave once you've changed. Invitations to dinner from Kyla were unnervingly frequent. In the past, she ran a cooking class and was a first-class cook, and even now, being alone after father-in-law passed away, she tended to make lavish feasts. Still, having to share a meal with her nearly half of the month was stressful, and when I tried to discuss it with Alan, Mom must be lonely by herself. Let's just keep her company for meals. He'd brush it off lightly. But when he saw I wasn't convinced, he looked into my eyes and spoke gently. Tiana, it must be hard preparing meals every day, especially with your busy job. I want you to relax a bit. Don't worry about it. All right, thank you. I knew Alan genuinely cared for me. However, my biggest concern was that the meals always included dairy products, which I'm allergic to. I've been allergic to dairy since childhood, unable to ingest milk, butter, or even bread. Accidental consumption would lead to nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. Kyla's home-cooked meals were full of dairy, including stews, cream pasta, and homemade bread with plenty of milk. It seemed intentional. Tiana, you're not eating anything. Don't you like my cooking? It's not that. I have a dairy allergy, as I've mentioned before. Could that be? Well, it's okay, you'll get used to it if you introduce it to your body slowly. Alan, there's more, so don't hold back and eat plenty. This pasta is awesome as always. Tiana, you should eat too. Yeah. Do these two not understand the severity of an allergy, persistently urging me to eat? However, unable to eat, I would often just sip the tea served, distracting myself from the hunger. Meanwhile, Kyla would chat happily with Alan, enjoying the meal with a beaming smile. Such incidents were common, causing me to fret over her overbearing attitude towards Alan and her problematic cooking. Once, unable to hold back, I brought this up with Alan. Do you think Kyla is deliberately making dishes I can't eat? That's impossible. She went through the trouble of making it, and I think it's a problem that you don't eat, Tiana. Don't say that. You understand my allergy issue. Yes, but remember, you've accidentally eaten allergens in food other than Mom's cooking before? It never led to anything serious, so don't overthink it. That may be true, but... Indeed, I've unintentionally eaten dairy when dining out. Dairy is so pervasive in dishes that sometimes it's unavoidable. Yet, I couldn't help but feel malice in Kyla's cooking. Once, she served fried chicken for dinner, and thinking it was safe, I ate it, only to find out the batter contained dairy. Soon after, I was overwhelmed with vomiting and severe abdominal pain, becoming unable to leave the bathroom. Are you complaining about my cooking that much? There's a limit to sarcasm. Kyla, showing her anger, confronted me as I finally emerged from the bathroom. It's not that. I think there was dairy in the batter of the fried chicken. It made me sick. The way you say it sounds like I did it on purpose. Alan grew up on my cooking. If you can't stand it, you won't get along with him in the future. If you're going to break up, better do it sooner than later. That's a different issue. No. Even if we have grandchildren in the future, they won't grow up healthy because of your picky eating. I wanted to seek Alan's help, but he wasn't there as he was taking a shower. You should go home first. I'll tell Alan you felt sick and sent you home. That day, I went home alone, and for weeks after, the persistent invitations from Kyla ceased completely. If it meant keeping some distance, I didn't mind her disliking me. Then, a month before my birthday, Alan made a suggestion. It's Tiana's first birthday since we got married. How about we go to a hot spring? That's wonderful. Of course, I'll go. Look forward to it. The trip is my gift to you. Okay. Thank you, as always. What's this all of a sudden? I'll make it luxurious since it's a special occasion. I was overjoyed by Alan's sentiment. The reservations were made without a hitch, and all that was left was the day of the trip. However, 2 days before the trip, I received a call from Kyla. Tiana. It's been a while. It's unusual for you, Kyla, to contact me. What a sarcastic tone. I'm calling to host a birthday party for you. What? It's your birthday in 2 days, right? Melissa is coming back that day. How about we all have dinner together? Melissa is Alan's sister, currently living far away due to her job transfer. I met her for the first time at my wedding, but we haven't seen each other since. She was refreshingly bright, and just from one glance, I could tell she was a good person and I wanted to talk to her more. However, Alan had planned a trip for my birthday. Can I confirm with Alan before answering? He'll say yes. You're the star, so I'll wait especially for you. Make sure to reply by tomorrow. After her purpose was served, Kyla unilaterally ended the call. I have a bad feeling about this. Despite my intuition, I had to check with Alan, so I brought up the birthday party when he got home. Melissa is coming back. That's great, let's go. But what about our trip? I was really looking forward to it. We can go anytime. But things haven't been going well with Kyla recently, and I'm not really feeling up to it. Mom wants to get closer to you, Tiana. She wouldn't host a birthday party otherwise. It's a good opportunity to accept her invitation. All right. I understand. Disappointed to cancel the trip, I decided to attend the birthday party hosted by Kyla. On the day of my birthday, dressed a bit more fashionably, I went to her house, where a lot of homemade dishes were already laid out on the table. My sister-in-law Melissa was also busy setting plates and preparing drinks. Melissa, it's been a long time. Tiana, I'm so happy to see you. Happy birthday. Let's talk a lot today. Just like the first time we met, she was indeed a bright and charming woman. Though things weren't going well with Kyla, I felt that I could have a good relationship with Melissa. Now that everyone is here, shall we start? Tiana, happy birthday. We all held our glasses and toasted. It was heartwarming to receive so many well wishes. Tiana, eat as much as you like today. But we also have a cake, so don't overdo it and save some room. Mom, isn't it a bit much? It's Tiana's special birthday, of course. Seeing her smiling more than usual, I felt somewhat relieved. The homemade dishes lined up before me were extravagant, from fried chicken to potato salad, roast beef, and even a scattered sushi, quite a feast. However, I couldn't help but feel that some of these might contain allergens, and once again, I couldn't bring myself to eat much. Still, reuniting with my sister-in-law and her husband made for lively conversations and an enjoyable time. Before I knew it, the sun had set, and it was 7 p.m. Then Kyla stood up and headed towards the kitchen. After a while, the lights suddenly went out, and Kyla approached with a cake, its candles lit. Everyone naturally started singing happy birthday in unison. Despite my age, I was genuinely delighted, bashfully clapping and savoring the joy. Tiana, please blow out the candles. All right. After I blew them out, Alan turned the lights back on. Then the cake became clearly visible, and I exclaimed, "Is this?" Kyla's homemade cake was extravagantly frosted with whipped cream, and as if that wasn't enough, more whipped cream was piped on top, concealing the strawberries entirely. Happy birthday! Make sure you eat it all. Unconcerned about my grimace, Kyla spoke with a direct gaze and a smile. The situation was so obviously intentional that I couldn't hide my irritation. This cake. I baked the sponge myself, you know? Took quite some time, so it must be delicious. I'll cut and serve it now. Before I could respond, she was about to forcefully plate it. But this was a precious moment, and I decided it was time to be straightforward. As I clenched my fists and was about to speak, an unexpected person addressed Kyla. Tiana's allergic to dairy, right? Melissa, who had been smiling until then, asked Kyla sharply, her expression now stern. Was she? Mom, you told me over the phone before. Do you understand how dangerous allergies are? They can be fatal. Really? Didn't you realize the severity, Alan? There are many people in the world who die from eating allergens. You can't take this lightly. I was touched that Melissa came to my rescue when I was in trouble. And I was overwhelmed with gratitude for her conveying the dangers of allergies. That varies from person to person. Tiana said she can eat a little without any issues. I never said that. In fact, I've always stated I can't eat it. Don't lie. Fine. Everyone else can share the cake. If you don't like it, just watch enviously. Even after all this, Kyla refused to understand, and I was truly infuriated. Regardless, her plan was either to make me sick from eating the cake or to isolate me for not eating it. I was ready to retaliate forcefully, but once again, the situation took an unexpected turn. Mom, enough already. Did you even listen to her? What's gotten into you, Alan? This is nothing new. Don't joke around. This is life-threatening. Are you saying it's okay if Tiana dies? That's not what I mean. She's been fine eating it before. So don't be so harsh. Let's serve Alan first. Stop it. I don't want to eat a cake with malice. Tiana, I'm sorry. I should have understood your allergy better. It's okay. I appreciate you understanding. Kyla, please take the cake away. Then, she made an outrageous statement, further intensifying the tension in the room. If you're going to be like that, I'll give up on making you eat it. Instead, how about we do a face cake? You know, like comedians do on variety shows, burying their face in the cake for a laugh. In my shock, I couldn't immediately respond, but what she said next was even worse. If it's just on your face, it won't be life-threatening, right? How about we take a group photo with it? It will make a wonderful memory. That's not funny. Stop making a mockery of me. What's wrong? I'm just making a suggestion. Tiana, you never seem to go along with everyone else. Why would you use an allergen I can't eat in the first place? You've been doing this on purpose all this time, haven't you? So what? What's wrong with that? Alan loves stew and cream pasta. With such picky eating, how can my son be happy with you, Tiana? It's boring if you won't eat the food I make, and I'm at my limit with you. He understands my allergy and married me. It's not the same as being picky. You've been causing me trouble all this time, and I won't forgive you for that. Make a fuss if you want. If you don't like it, you can leave. Facing her unrepentant attitude, I delivered a decisive blow. Understood. I'll sever ties with you. I won't associate with you from now on. That's fine by me. It's actually a relief. I'm cutting ties with you too. Alan, what are you saying? I accepted the birthday party because I thought it was a kind gesture. I didn't give you money for the ingredients just so you could harass her. Sorry. So, stop being angry, will you? It's too late. I regret sending money every month to make your life a bit easier. I always thought the dinner invitations were a thank you for the living expenses, not to trouble her. I really misjudged you. In fact, ever since father-in-law passed away, he had been giving her $500 every month. This was out of gratitude for raising him and because she claimed the Social Security survivor benefits weren't enough. Feeling that his goodwill had been trampled on, he was furious. I have no intention of seeing my mother again. Tiana, let's go home. He immediately stood up, grabbed his bag, and headed to the entrance. As I picked up my things and was about to leave, Kyla clung to me. I'm really sorry. Please stop, Alan, please. Let me go. It's too late for apologies. What you did to me constitutes assault. Be grateful I'm not pressing charges. Wait. My comfort is spending time with him. Ignoring Kyla's tearful pleas, I left the house. Walking home together, he apologized again. Tiana, I'm really sorry. I'll be more careful from now on. In the days that followed, both Alan and I received numerous calls from Kyla on our mobile phones. We ignored the dozens of calls, and eventually, they stopped. The birthday incident brought Melissa and me closer, and we started to communicate frequently. I apologized for leaving early that day. Leaving was the right choice. I would have done the same. She kindly reassured me, a gentle sister-in-law. She was also appalled by Kyla's behavior and had distanced herself. Kyla, abandoned by her beloved children and left lonely, lost the energy to cook her favorite dishes and resorted to eating ready-made meals. Spending her twilight years in darkness and solitude was her own fault. Meanwhile, without Kyla's interference, my husband and I finally had time to ourselves. He rebooked the birthday trip he had canceled, and we created happy memories. We intend to continue enjoying our life together as a loving couple.